You know, when I was at NAMM show the last 2 years, and I walk into the room, I see my picture there, I'm like, come on guys, this is like hilarious, like there's no way I should be there. And you see like George Harrison on your left, and you see Malcolm Young on your right. And I think that's really it. I'm Joseph Fischer, I'm here with Gretsch guitars. So my first Gretsch was Chet Atkins, the classic orange one. We were on tour, I was on tour with a hip hop band from Tel Aviv, and the bass player actually wanted to buy a guitar. So we were looking around New York, the usual tour of like stores, and we ended up in Guitar Center, and he picked up one, and I thought it sounded amazing. So when I went back to Tel Aviv after the tour, I had a recording session, and I called him like, hey, can I borrow your Gretsch, please? We did like a Western kind of song, like the classic single string kind of low notes. And I recorded it, and immediately I told the engineer like, okay, I gotta have one of these. So keep an eye, like he knew a lot of people, all that. And we found one online, secondhand. I went to a buddy's house. Apparently it was a gift he got from Bob Dylan's guitar player, which was on tour, like a crazy story. And it was just sitting there with no case, like nothing. He was a lefty, so he couldn't play it. And he sold it to me for super cheap, and I was like, oh my God. And since then, I have, all kinds of guitars, so like Les Paul, Strats, Tellys, like, all of them. And since then, I think that's the only guitar I played for many years on every stage. So the Chet Atkins was my first model, and this is sort of where I discovered Gretsch. And I think in the beginning it was more like, I love the clean tone of it. I love how non-specific it is, you know what I mean? When you play a Strat, it sounds like a Strat. When you play a Les Paul, it sounds like a Les Paul. So obviously Gretsch has its tone, but at the same time, it's very different from other clean tones. So that was the first thing that kind of grabbed my attention about it. And also the feel was really chunky, really big, and I like to play pretty hard and loud. And I remember going into the studio with Ninette, actually recording Paper Parachute, the first album. I was doing the rehearsal with it, and I figured, okay, when we'll go to the studio, I'll keep playing the clean tones with it, because I had the classic like spring reverb and tremolo sound, like just perfect for this guitar, and also really inspired a lot of the parts in it. But I figured when we get to the studio, we're gonna track some heavy guitars, so I got my Les Paul, and the ES335, which sort of was my transition from solid body to a hollow body. And when we got to the distortion parts, I was like, okay, just a second before we switch, let's just hear how it sounds. And I remember it like vividly, just playing the first like power chord. I'm like, I think I'm gonna stick to it. It works. And this is where everything changed for me. So when I moved to LA, what I felt about the Chet is I loved it, but I felt on stage that it's a little too heavy sometimes. Like sometimes you want something that's a little thinner and makes you, I don't know, like sort of like move freely, and maybe get something that cuts a little bit more through the mix. This is where I got this girl, the center block Falcon model, which I think is probably one of the best instruments I've ever played in my life. This thing sounds good in any situation, like whether it's like a quick like DI thing in the studio, which happens so much, especially in like pop sessions and like all kinds of stuff. Being a producer, I have to do a lot of different things, and this tool is just amazing for it. And then on stage, it's a whole different thing, because it has the Gretsch legacy sound, like the big clean tone and the fat like low end. But also when you get the distortion parts, it barely feedbacks unless I really wanted to. And it's just, I don't know, this thing is just perfect. Some other things I use in the studio a lot is the jet bass, which is amazing. Rocky, punchy, very like round, solid and growly, yeah. And also the Falcon bass, which is also very unique with the flat wound strings, like tone is just perfect, it's really cool. Starting off with Ninette, which was the first act I actually played with the Gretsch, that was the Chet Atkins phase that I had. And then moving to the US, starting working with Kirsten and Barnes, and continuing the touring and recording with Ninette, this is where I started using the Falcon. And you know, Kirsten is just like pure pop. This is like so gentle, like 70% of the time it's just long chords with reverbs, you know, nothing special, you know what I mean? But then again, you gotta have a guitar that really rings, that makes you play a G chord and makes it sound perfect, because otherwise, like, what are you doing, right? So, you know, with Kirsten, I remember we've done the Today Show for her debut single from the album, and this was like there, just right there, like the very belly kind of ringy tone, which is beautiful, and clean guitar. And then I went to play with Barnes, which is just like dirty blues, low tuning, like, you know, some slide things, very, very dirty and very aggressive. And it just worked perfectly. You know, I plugged it in and everyone's like, oh my God, the tone is great. I'm like, good, like I didn't do anything. It's just literally, it's just guitar. And then with Ninette, there's a lot of variety, I guess. Some of the songs are more of like in the ballad kind of realm with, like, again, like I'm a big fan of like big reverbs and kind of washy tones. And then some of them will be really like grungy and like sharp, kind of distorted things. I didn't encounter anything that I couldn't tackle with this guitar. Even when I do a lot of more like groovy stuff and like R&B, and for the muted, like, you know, the plucky stuff, which it works great. I mean, there's something really cool about it. Unlike Strats or Les Pauls, which are very like distinct, Gretsch has kind of its own realm. You can't really compare it to anything else. And I think, first of all, a lot of it is because it's a hollow body guitar. Now, you know, going back to, I remember when I got my 335 for the first time, I was like, okay, I don't think I can go back to solid bodies. And that's what happened. Now, Gretsch is a whole different level because it almost lives in its own space. And if I have to describe the Gretsch sound, it's just, it has this, like, it's a very big, clean tone, which does not hurt you on the high frequencies. That's what I love about it. It's very round, like, throughout. And at the same time, it has this great quality of being very, very round and thick, but still very punchy. So it cuts through the mix in a great way, but it doesn't, you know, hurt you up top. You know, when you play like a big chord, all the strings are really balanced. Like, you get this warm, and actually it makes you play a lot simpler. That's what I love about this guitar. You know, I remember my first sessions with the Chet. It's like I pretty much played like one bass note through like two big amps with a little bit of tremolo and reverb, and I was like, I think that's the guitar part for the song. And this was totally inspired by the guitar. If I would do the same part with any different guitar, it wouldn't work, for sure, like 100%. Yeah. When you talk to people about Gretsch guitars, they think about country music and about Chet Atkins, right, and the legacy, Nashville, right? But the truth is, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is George Harrison played it, Malcolm Young played it, and you see Depeche Mode guys play it, you see The Edge plays it, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, so many people and so many genres, and still this guitar does stand out and stay unique. And I think the ability to maintain such like an old school country folk legacy with being a big part in the pop rock kind of realm just makes it a winner, you know what I mean? It's something really special.